Hi, devotees.
Devotees. It's half frozen for me too, so I'm like, I don't know where people are. I'm Natasha.
I'm Janie.
I'm Jill.
Yay, special
Special
guest! I think the only thing that we have is a few things before we start today's episode. This is an adult-rated podcast. We do say adult things and discuss adult-related topics, so keep that in mind when listening with little ears around. And we will be getting very much into the weeds today because we are doing a very special episode. Jill, what are we doing today?
We are doing Assistant to the Villain series. I don't know what the whole thing's called.
I'm pretty sure that's the name of the series. I think it is Assistant to the Villain, yes.
No, my bad.
So we
look it up every time.
We literally have, because we're like, it's like the A of villain to the something. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So we're good. We have finally figured out that it is indeed the Assistant to the Villain series.
Okay. Got it.
So we split it up in a couple different ways, devotees. So each of us decided to take on a book because there are 3 books before Adversary to the Villain comes out. Natasha's going to put that on screen when that book comes out because it's pretty much like a week or so away at this point when this episode actually comes out. So we know that everyone needed a recap of this wonderful, funny series. So we split it up in 3 different ways. I'm taking book 1, Jill is taking book 2, and Natasha is rounding out the trilogy. About to be quadrilogy? What do you call that? It's just a series at that point. Just a series at that point.
Series.
And so that's the way that we've decided to split it up. So, introduction. We have book 1, which is going to be Assistant to the Villain, and this is by Hannah Mayer. What's her last name?
Oh, Hannah Nicole Mayer.
Hannah Nicole Mayer. I knew Mayer was in there somewhere. I was like, it's Hannah Mayer or something. Hannah Nicole Mayer is the author of this series. And yeah, okay. So we should just jump right into it. So first I'm going to introduce you to the characters and then to the location of where everything takes place, or the world, if you will. So our characters are Evie. She is introduced to us as an unemployed lady with a dad and a kid sister. Evie is a very kind soul, and Evie kind of is always getting into some kind of trouble. She's very klutzy. She's very clumsy. She is hard-headed as well, I would say. And then we have the villain. He's kind of a mysterious man who steals things from the king to do quote-unquote evil things with, although that's kind of questionable. He's supposed to be morally gray, but I don't really see him in that way. I think it's up to interpretation, kind of what he's got going on. Again, I'm only talking about the first book, so his dubious plots and plans come later on in the series, but we'll get to that. Then we have Kingsley, who is the magical frog who can communicate with us with these cute little signs that have usually only one word on them, and he wears a crown that seemingly never falls off. And then we have King, obviously the King Benedict. He's important to the story. He's kind of like an evil king. Evil in some ways, questionable in character in other ways. The villain hates him. We don't really know why in the first book. It's alluded to, but never really fully said. I think things come to light later on in the series as to why we're supposed to hate King Benedict. But he's kind of the issue. He's the issue and the full source of all of these books. We also have Becky. She's kind of a heinous office leader, if you will. She's the office manager, HR person. Evie and her have beef for sure, but they find some common ground later on. Then we have Blade. He is the dragon owner / trainer / magical pet kind of information lord. He seems to know all of these things. He has a dragon named Fluffy. I think that kind of rounds out all of the important characters in the story. There is an evil blacksmith in the first book who we hate, and he's not even worth mentioning the name of. I think that's everybody in the first book. Would you all agree?
I think so.
Oh, actually, we're missing a few people.
Oh, the dad? The sister.
Evie's dad, we'll just call him Evie's dad,
Griffin.
the father. There we go, Griffin. Her kid sister, which I did mention that she had a kid sister. The healer of the villain, Tatiana. And we have Tatiana's ex and the villain's sister, Claire, as well as the villain has a brother, Malcolm.
Yes.
He's a bartender. Claire makes magical potions and inks and things, and so she's an alchemist. And his brother owns a tavern and is just kind of a drunken alcoholic. And that's his kind of role in the story thus far, at least in the first book. So, okay. So the location is the Kingdom of Renadon. There's not much more to that. It's pretty much only in Renadon. Okay. So let's jump right into it. So we find Evie wandering through the forest. She is an unemployed person at this time. She's kind of lamenting about her life and thinking about how she really needs to get a fucking job when she runs into the villain. He's kind of caught up in between the guards and getting away from the guards, and he's like, "Get down, girl, like, get down. You need to be careful. These people will shoot you." And she's like, "Oh shit," she did not know what the hell she just walked into. So she's like, while he's like trying to get away from these Kingsguard, Evie is like, "Yeah, man, I'm just like really down on my luck right now, man. Like, I'm unemployed and like shit is kind of tough for me." And the villain's like, "Girl, I'm sorry about what you have going on. I'm glad that you helped me get away from this Kingsguard. I guess I will be offering you a job at my manor, at my house, at my castle. So you seem like a good person, and you seem like you need a fresh start. So I'll just go ahead and offer you a job." And at first Evie's like, I don't know. And also, why are you hot? That's really confusing because I have heard of the villain, and I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be like ugly and like bedraggled and like just not what you are, and you're like low-key hot, and I'm confused, but I guess like I'll accept the job, but how am I gonna break this to my family? Anyways, she decides that she is going to take the job. So she shows up at the villain's house. She gets introduced to the magical frog. She's intrigued by this frog. They develop a little relationship. Her and Kingsley are kind of tight. The villain and her, they're getting to know each other. She like really takes an important role in her office job. She becomes the assistant, hence the name of the book, Assistant to the Villain. So she is kind of his right-hand person, for lack of a better word. She runs the office. She seems to know where everything goes. She builds rapport with everybody else that works there. He runs quite the gambit also. He's got a lot of fucking people working for them. He keeps people quite fucking employed. And they all seem to have something in common. They all also seem to hate King Benedict, but we don't really know exactly why they all do, but they all have a different experience or bad experience with the king, and that's what kind of keeps them all together and working for the villain. Not necessarily because he's like an evil person that they believe should be doing what he's doing. It's more so that they all equally kind of hate the king together, and that's what kind of keeps them all together. So, Evie also has revealed in this story that her father was once a knight for the king, and that she keeps her job from her family because she feels that if her dad ever found out, or her sister ever found out that she was working for the villain, a person that they're not supposed to be working for, let alone like, which she does, she's got a big crush on the villain, they would probably ostracize her. So she kind of keeps that secret from her entire village and her family. So now, jumping in, this is just in the prologue, jumping in, chapter 1. So Evie comes into work. She's been working for the villain for about 3 months now, and she's noticing that there's been some excessive decapitation and going on. She's a little bit worried that he might be in kind of a bad mood. So Evie, in her last job, was treated very poorly. She was a blacksmith's apprentice, and she got quite injured from a enchanted blade that he used on her, seemingly. So she has kind of an injury on her back, and whenever she, gets injured, her injury will glow. So her knife, her scar from her last job will glow if she gets another injury. So she ends up getting an injury on, on her day here and has to go and see the healer. And basically she's talking with Tatiana, and she's found a discrepancy in the books that she was nervous to tell the villain about. Somebody has been taking a little off the top. Things have been being moved around, and she's like, I don't know if I should tell the villain about this. It seems like something that he might get pissed off about. And then she's also talking to Tatiana the healer, which she's become kind of good friends with, that she had a dirty dream about the boss. And Tatiana's kind of like the chismosa, the gossip of the whole get together. She's always like here for the plot and for the party, but we don't really know very much about Tatiana. So she knows all the gossip, but she hasn't really shared very much of her own. And boy, she does have some secrets that we come to find out later in the story, that's for sure. So things are coming up. She knows that there's a discrepancy in the books. So later on, the villain and her are talking, and he kind of takes Evie aside and is like, I know that there's a traitor in our midst. I know that something is happening. One, because I intercepted a delivery, and there was more Kingsguard there than was supposed to be. So somebody is ratting me out for stealing things from the king. And immediately Evie, who has a issue, she doesn't like Becky. She's like, it's fucking Becky. I'm telling you right now. And the villain's like, what would make you suspect that? And she was like, I just don't like her. Something about her, I don't like her. And the villain is like, I trust Becky. I don't think it's Becky. I'm going to entrust you with figuring out who the fuck is fucking my shit up, and we have a traitor in our midst, and I'm gonna trust you to figure this shit out. So Evie is like, all right, I better take a non-biased approach as possible. She takes her job duties very seriously. I'm gonna take my little notebook, and I'm gonna go and do some research on the rest of the employees, because it's one of you, but I don't know who it is. She also is trying to be so non-biased that she's like, it could be me. And the villain is like, why would it be you? You literally have like a promise on your finger. So he used some enchanted ink for all of his like most entrusted employees, that if they lie or betray him, it instantly kills them. So she has this promise on her finger in gold ink, which is very important to the story. And he was like, girl, how could it be you? You literally, like, hello. And she's just like, I don't know, but what if it is? And he's just like, oh my God, get out of here. Go do your job. So a little while later, we are introduced to Blade, which is the dragon rider / bonded person to our dragon Fluffy, the villain's magical dragon that has in his employ. Now, this dragon is a little bit of a scaredy cat. Not very good at doing its like dragon duties, which I envision the dragon as being kind of like the guard dog to the castle, only it's not really giving that energy.
Same.
Right?
Also,
Yeah.
I love the name Fluffy. I would have named it too.
So we're introduced to Blade. You know, Evie is kind of like sussing out Blade, and Blade seeming to have like a similar energy to Evie, where he's kind of like always injured or always getting into something, usually dragon related. Him and the dragon are still getting to know each other, okay? He like says that he came to the villain's employ by finding this dragon. We don't know how true that actually is. That comes to light later on in the story. Okay, so during this time, we're finding out that one, Evie's mom has dipped out, so it's just her, not that she's dead, she's just left. She has just her dad to rely on, and her kid sister, she used to have a brother. He no longer is with us. Okay, now these chapters flip back and forth between Evie's perspective and the villain's perspective, and we find out the villain's name in chapter 6. Tristan Arthur Maverine. Yes. Tristan Arthur Maverine. I don't know about y'all, but that's a pretty sexy fucking name. I accept. Yes. AKA the villain. Mm-hmm. I exclusively refer to him as the villain. I do not refer to him as Tristan at any other point. Just so everybody is aware. Okay. So Evie gives the villain the list of suspects, and, you know, she lets them know that, you know, she would at this point torture someone for him if need be, right? She's like, no, I'm loyal to you, my dog. I would torture someone for you. She says that kind of like offhandedly. I think a little bit because she's afraid of him and a little bit because it's honest. Now, our villain, he said, you what? That is like a calling card for him. He said, you what now? We find out from the villain's perspective, he's got a big fat fucking crush on Evie too. So it is a mutual crushing, which we are living for. We are living for that. So the next couple of days, they're still doing their investigation. Suddenly, there's a bomb in the villain's desk. So Evie is trying to get rid of this bomb, so she runs out onto the parapet. She throws it. Well, then, because she's a klutz, she gets her heel stuck in the goddamn floor, and the villain shows up out of nowhere. He's been gone for a while. He shows up out of nowhere and rescues her and is like, oh, thank God you threw that bomb away. But, like, why the fuck would you do that? That's crazy. Like, you could have died. And she was like, yeah, I know. But, like, so could have a lot of other people. So we kind of find out that Evie is a very caring character and she will do anything for anybody else. If you are in her circle and she fucks with you, and she also doesn't like the, like, ceaseless death kind of a thing. She's like, no, not everybody needs to fucking die. Like, I'm here to, like, you know, save the day. So, we find out that while the villain was away, what he was doing was intercepting the Kingsguard from trying to gain access to some of his safe houses that he has. So he has things stored in some other areas, and he's finding out that once again, the rat that is amongst them has given away some of his safe house information. Even though his safe houses are full of shit that he's stolen from the king, it's very confusing. He finds out that, you know, Evie was going to get blown up. So how he found that out, how he knew she was in peril, that comes to light in the story a little bit later on. So the tower explodes. There's a lot of, like, sexual tension in this chapter. Chapter 10, the tension is tensioning. We found out that before, right, the villain has a crush on Evie. And in the first couple of chapters, we find out that Evie has a crush on the villain. And so this moment where they're like, you know, things have blown up and he's, like, scooped her in his arms. She's, like, swoon and he's, like, swoon. And there's more swooning. And it's very, there's a lot of tension, which we love. So we can tell from this point in the story, it's going to be a slow build romance. And they're gonna tug us along by our little fucking nipples. And we're just not gonna, we're not gonna love it, but we're gonna be here for it. Anyways, so the villain offers to take Evie home after her ankle injury, because she injures her ankle pretty badly from the bomb blowing up. And that's when Tristan, aka the villain, is introduced to Evie's kid sister, who is quite enamored with him. She is quite taken. She's like, oh, he is very handsome. And in the middle of all of this, Kingsley came along for the ride, and the frog does try to escape, and the villain is like, girl, get back in your saddlebag. I don't know where the fuck you think you're going. Naughty frog, bad frog. And you can kind of tell that Kingsley's like, man. And at this point, I'm asking the question, why the fuck is the frog trying to escape? More on that later. So, you know, the villain basically gives Evie the out after this. Hey, I understand if you want to leave your job because you almost got blown up into pieces. So, you know, hey, I'm not going to be offended if you want to go ahead and leave your job. And Evie is like, how dare you? How dare you even say that to me? That's fucked up, actually. I want to keep my job. But, like, you're kind of right. That was kind of a risky thing for me to go into, and so I don't really know how I feel about it, but you know what, I do want my job. You know what, no, villain, I want my job. So he's like, all right, listen, we can't allow this to continue to happen because people are going to get injured. And suddenly the villain is okay with people not getting injured. Mind you, he's got a bunch of decapitated heads hanging up in his hallway, but that's neither here nor there. So he goes, you know what, I recognize where this bomb comes from. We have to go to this pub. I think you've been there before. And she goes, wait a damn minute, how the fuck do you know I've been there before? And he's like, that's neither here nor there. We must go to this pub. So they end up going over to this pub, and they find out that the owner of the local bar is his brother. And he's like, I do know who I sold that timepiece to. However, I don't really know because he was wearing a hood and a mask, and I'm not sure, and I was quite drunk. And the villain is like, what? And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm honestly, I've not been able to be that helpful. And so we find out at this point that the villain and his brother Malcolm, well, they don't really have a good relationship with each other. To say the least, they're kind of estranged. So that's kind of a thing. Before they leave the bar, Malcolm does remember that the individual who bought the bomb from him, or the timepiece that was attached to the bomb, had bright blue glowing ink all over his hands. So that was the most distinguishing kind of piece of information about this individual. Evie puts it together that whoever is trying to hurt the villain is also trying to use the people close to him to do it, which she thinks is very interesting, because the villain's not supposed to have people that are close to him, but she's now finding out that he indeed does have a family, which was she was kind of shook about that. So, Evie decides to spend the weekend in the library, and, she starts to think about, her mom at this point. She's thinking about her mom and her brother, who were both destroyed by magic. So we're getting little more drops about what has happened to her family. And Evie ends up finding a letter from King Benedict to Blade, the dragon rider, requesting him to come and work for him. And she said, that's motherfucking suspicious as fuck, Blade. What the hell is this about? Blade reveals that he didn't find the dragon egg, that he stole it from King Benedict. And Blade begs Evie not to tell the boss, aka the villain. She feels like she shouldn't trust so easily, and things are starting to get sown where she's like, I don't know if any of these people that I'm working with are really trustworthy at all. So the villain and Evie kind of set off to go talk to Clarissa, aka Claire, which reveals to be the villain's sister and an alchemist, and the one that probably made the glowing blue ink that was seen on the purchaser of the bomb's hands. So then we also find out that, Tatiana had a little dalliance with Clarissa, maybe a little bit more than that. They were in a long-term relationship that did not end well. And, there's a little bit of intrigue in this, right? They seemingly fucking hate each other. During this time, Tristan reveals that he used to actually work for the king, but he won't reveal what went down between the two of them. So we're seeing more and more that he hates the king, and like he is convinced that whoever had the blue ink on his hands is sent after him by the king, like specifically from and by the king. And he goes, I don't really, I'm not sure why now, after all these years, he's still coming after me, but here we are. You know what? Even more fuel on the fire to why I need to fuck his shit up and intercept his shipments and, like, make his life really difficult. Vengeance is, like, what he keeps saying, but we don't really know what he's trying to get vengeance for. So it turns out that the villain ended up finding the letter of employment for Blade, and now he thinks that the letter that was for Blade was actually intended for Evie. So without thinking, he fires her. And she is absolutely gutted by being fired. And she's also like, why would you fire, why would you fire me? You really don't trust me. You really don't trust anybody. She's pissed. She's, frankly, for lack of a better term, she is fucking pissed at him. And she's like, I'm not going to forgive you for doing this. I would never betray you. It's somebody else. Like, trust me, I would never betray you. So Blade, the dragon rider, owns up to the employment letter from the king, and Blade is like, please, can I keep my job? I don't want to leave here. And also, you need to rehire Evie. But the villain is quite hard-headed, and he's like, do I really need to rehire Evie? So Evie, during her time away from her job, is, talking about how her brother had died and her mother had disappeared. So We find out at this time that her mother had been blessed with starlight, and she was out playing with them in a field. Her younger sister had just been born. She was out playing in the field with her brother and her mom was tossing starlight back and forth, and accidentally killed her brother. And so she's like getting in her feels about it, right? She's lamenting, she's going through a hard time losing her job, and now she's like, how can I afford to feed my kid sister and take care of my dad, who is sick, right? Her dad is sick during this time. That's why he's not able to work, and it's solely resting on her shoulders. So the villain is regretting firing Evie, and Becky low-key thinks that the villain needs to rehire Evie, which was quite the twist in the story, because we kind of thought that Becky and Evie had this big beef and that Becky would never say anything like this, but she's like, no, like, honestly, like, she's the only one that knows about this office, and like, she keeps everything straight, like, she kind of runs the shit, and like, yeah, unfortunately, we need to rehire her. And the villain is like, oh, interesting that you would say that. So Evie actually is the one that shows back up at the boss's office and apologizes. She's the one that apologizes first, even though he was kind of on his way to do so. She didn't even get a chance to get the apology from the villain, which, justice for Evie. She deserves that motherfucking apology from that dick. Instead, she ended up doing it, which just isn't that just classically the way. And she ends up asking for her job back. A villain allows her to have her job back so they can continue their investigation. So at this point, Blade reveals that he found some insignia from whoever had made the chains that were around the dragon's neck, because they decided to take those off. And on the chains, there is a signature who made them. And inside of it, it says, "The villain will fall." Still no idea who the fuck made this. So, you know, Evie is trying to figure out, both of them are trying to figure it out. Evie's kind of like out in Times Square on one of her days off, and she's trying to figure out like why everybody seems to hate the villain. She's like asking all these people in town, like, I know that we're supposed to hate this man, but I don't really know why. Can anybody elaborate for me as to why we're supposed to like hate the villain? And they all are just kind of like, because he's evil, he's bad. And she's like, okay, but why? And they were like, you don't ask that question. We just hate him because we're supposed to. It's mob mentality, Evie. And she's like, oh, right. It's interesting because she doesn't understand, Evie doesn't seem to understand why, you know, the villain hates the king. The king is well beloved. At this point, he's like supports women's rights in this story and women's wrongs. And she is kind of like, I don't really understand, you know, what the beef is between these two. So the villain approaches her, and because Evie used to be an apprentice for the blacksmith, the villain approaches Evie and wants her to introduce him to the blacksmith in town. This makes Evie extremely uncomfortable for many reasons. We find out that the blacksmith made moves on her, and she rejected the fuck out of him. So he cut her, which was insane. An insane thing to do. What a fucking piece of shit. That's my personal opinion. They ask the blacksmith to create a collar for a new magical creature that the villain has attained. We learn that the smith did make the collar for the dragon by a special agent of the king. So he's recalling, you know, the villain's like, yeah, who made it though? Like, who asked you to make this collar? Like, why would they ask you to make it? And the smith tells the villain that a man with a mask came in, and the villain is suspecting undercover work, potentially. So the villain actually then dismisses the blacksmith and is like, actually, we will not be in need of your services. And Evie sees the blacksmith move towards the villain with the dagger, and she fucking intercepts that shit and is like, whoa, no, you're not touching my boss. And then the villain, this is my favorite part really of the story, the villain breaks the blacksmith's wrist, which, good justice, for trying to hurt him and also for hurting Evie. He's kind of seeing this interaction of the blacksmith with Evie, and he said, nope. He fucked you up. I can just tell. It's a vibe. By the way that you're acting, by the way that he's acting. So, the villain at this point also reveals that she has a death blow on her shoulder. So again, you're remembering that glowing injury that Evie has, right? If you were to hit it in the right spot, it would actually kill her. And so she's like, what? And he's like, this is a very bad thing, Evie. One of the villain's powers is that he can see lifelines in people and also death lines. So he knows exactly where to hit someone to cause them the most injury and or to kill them. So the villain gets the smithy, aka the blacksmith, to leave town at this point. Now we're on to the magical creature portion of the story. So the magical creature that he was referring to, that he had quote unquote captured, well, he hadn't actually captured it yet, but they're called Guvras. And the Guvras basically are these mystical creatures, snake-like creatures that cause havoc if they're away from their mates. So he ends up capturing the male Guvra, knowing that the king has the female Guvra in its clutches. For the reason of obtaining, we're really not sure why the king has the female. Something about their children's venom is like a cure-all or something like that. Whatever, we don't know why. But in order for the female to reproduce venom, she needs to be with the male. And the villain does know this, right? Or I think it's Blade that actually tells him this. Blade seems to know a lot about magical creatures, even though he's not very good with them. So, the villain wants to tell Tatiana, his healer, to try to help Evie. And then they've caught the Guvra, and then all hell fucking breaks loose. There's a big fucking storm. Nobody can leave his manor. Nobody can leave his castle. So they're all staying there for the night. And then he says, if we have the male Guvra, the female will stop at nothing to get with the male. So all we need to do is kind of hold on to the male, and the female Guvra will show up to be with the male. And that's exactly what happens. They catch the female Guvra, and then we get a little bit of backstory on Tatiana and the villain. Segue into backstory. We get a little bit of backstory on Tatiana and the villain. We learn that at this time they actually grew up together, and the villain is a secretly sweet person. He baked Tatiana a cake on her 10th birthday. Aww. And danced with her, which is so sweet. And she's like, yeah, he's like not all that bad. And Evie's like, I know, but like funny that you're telling me that because gag. So of course our villain, who seems to do all these evil things, is actually like a sweetheart. Naturally, that makes sense. So what happens during the storm? We find out that one of the maps goes missing from storage, and the villain is like, fuck it, after the storm, everybody can have the day off, except for you, Evie. I need you back here because we're going to figure out who the fuck is infiltrated. We're going to go through everybody's shit here in this office and figure out who the fuck is fucking with my shit. And while he's telling Evie all of this, they end up overhearing some interns talking shit about Evie and the villain. They mention a mask being found on the grounds, and nobody has told the villain about that. So the villain ends up taking Evie home that evening, and on the way there, they see the masked figure ahead of them. So they start running after the masked figure, and guess the fuck what? Guess who it is? You would never guess. Motherfucking Becky! It's fucking Becky! So it turns out Becky was trying to sneak into the palace for the cure. She happens to have somebody close to her family, her grandmother, who has the same illness, supposed illness, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that Evie's father has. This is where Evie and Becky find common ground, much to their chagrin. They're not super excited about that. So Evie gets home, she has a mysterious letter on her desk inviting her to some fucking party, and she ends up deciding to go because it's by the healer, the big healer of the realm. So she's like, I don't know what this is all about, but he's saying that he has the cure. I guess I'll show up. So funnily enough, who else is there? Blade and Becky. They've both also been invited to this party. Well, all hell fucking breaks loose at this party, right? The big reveal is that Papa Maverine, aka Tristan's daddy, is the core healer, the big healer. Oh shit, Tristan's motherfucking daddy. And that the letter that he received a letter from Evie as well, forgery. And she was like, yeah, and he's like, I didn't write this letter to you either. And Evie's like, huh, what the fuck? So, Papa Maverick is aware of his son's life choices and doesn't support him fully, but also is still like, that's my son and I love my son, which, aw. Well, then the villain shows up, of course, because he always seems to show up at exactly the right time. So Evie is like, oh fuck, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be here, I better go. So she starts running away from the villain. The villain and his papa are quite estranged for obvious reasons. Hello, he's supposedly the villain of the era. And we kind of get a little bit of information about his mom, and that he was the villain's mother was quite cold and pretty distant from him growing up. The villain ends up catching Evie and he goes, you know what, I think that we should dance. So we have this little sweet moment between the villain and Evie, and they're having a little dance, and then screaming ensues. Both of the Goovras have escaped and they are attacking the party. So the male Goovra has been released, and obviously by the spy, the infiltrator, whoever is in the villain's business and is trying to fuck his shit up. And Arthur, that's the villain's dad, aka the core healer, is gravely injured. For some reason, also the villain's sister is there, and she offers to make a sleeping draft for the Goovra, and you know, they're going after the Goovra. Well, then the villain gets knocked the fuck out by the valiant Kingsguard. And Evie's like, whoa, misters and sirs, that's my husband. That's my fucking husband. Don't hurt him. And they're like, all right, we'll let you and your husband go. And she's like, yeah, it's because I got my period. Don't you know, me and my husband are trying to have a baby, but I got my period. I have to go. And they're like, oh my fucking God, I don't want to be hearing about that. Like, girl, you just Miss Girl, you need to go. So the villain starts to wake up, and she can tell that he's gonna like start killing bitches as soon as he wakes up. So she kisses him. And guess what? He kisses her back. And then the villain reveals he's in love with her, and he's been in love with her for quite some time. Yeah. And everybody in the crowd goes, we know, we've been known about this. We know about it. They end up taking away, the Kingsguard ends up taking his dad away. And everybody thinks that it's his father who is actually the villain. When in fact, that is not the villain, right? The villain's like, I'm the fucking villain. It's not my father. And so he's like, we better get him back. He's like important. He helps so many people. He's the core healer. It's kind of his thing. Okay, so they go back to the manor, and Claire, aka the villain's sister, is like, we need to work with you, Evie, to not be afraid of the blade. Okay, you need to get your power back from this blade from the blacksmith. So this part of the story kind of confused me, because I said, don't we need to go get Papa Maverick? Why are we talking about this blade? What is this? What is this arc? I don't understand this arc. Okay, so they're like, we're going to start training you so that you can tolerate this blade. Okay, we're diverting from the story here. But anyways, so they start working with that. Don't understand. It's not important until it's important, right? So, and then there's more magical ink talk with Claire, right? We're getting some, I make different colors of ink. This ink does this ink does that. Da, 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 da. Okay. Anyways. So Evie goes home, and she goes through her father's things one day, and she finds out that her mom has been writing letters to her dad. What? Her mom was supposedly supposed to just disappear off the earth. Now she's writing fucking letters to her father? What the fuck? So we find out that the villain who used gold ink, remember the gold ink on her hand? Right. So the villain used gold ink for her employment agreement, and it's basically a tracking beacon, and it tells him whenever she's in peril. So we find out that the knight who purchased the ink from Claire is dead. Okay. And we went down this wrong trail. God damn it. Okay. And then Evie's going through the letters, and she starts to notice, there's this letter from my mom, but oh my God, what are all these other pieces of paper? This is my handwriting. This is my notebook. These are my notes. Turns out her dad was the one who bought the fucking ink from Claire and has been able to see everything that she's ever written down. He's the sneak. He's the snake. He's been the one that's ratting to the king. What the fuck, right? So he's a bad man. He turns out to be this fucking piece of shit. Her dad lied about being sick. He was never sick the whole time. Her father is still with the Valiant Guard. He's been undercover the whole time. Evie ends up getting one off on her dad and sedates him. Thank fucking God, right? The villain shows up to help Evie, to soothe her. They have a moment. They go back to the manor. And then Evie is like, but I forgot my notebook. And we have to go back to my house because I forgot my notebook. It's really important to me. Even though the notebook is enchanted and the ink that she's been using this whole time has been used by her dad. Okay, girl. I would say, hey, maybe we just get a new notebook. Maybe we just start fresh. I don't know. Just me. So, but you know what? No, she's got to have her little fucking notebook. Whatever. So they're like, he's like, because he's in love with her, right? He's like, I'll go back with you. We'll walk. Well, they're fucking intercepted, right? They're intercepted by the Valiant Kingsguard. Shit pops off, right? So this is a funny part of the story that made me fucking laugh. So he's looking down at Evie and he's like looking at her and being like, I really love looking down on you. But I wish that there wasn't such a distance between the two of us. He goes, when I wrote, when being too tall keeps you from your love, the distance, lol. This part of the book made me fucking, if you saw my spit, I'm so sorry. This part of the book made me fucking laugh out loud, like literally. And then it is revealed because he starts to think about Kingsley during these chapters, right? Like while he's being intercepted, that, Kingsley is a good and noble prince. I'm sorry, the enchanted frog that you have used to be your friend and he's a prince? Hello? Anyways, in with the Kingsguard that intercept the villain and Evie is also the blacksmith. He comes back around. And then Evie slits his motherfucking throat. Justice! We love that part. We love it. They take the villain away, and Evie is like, we have to rescue him. We have to go get him. And then she comes to Evie and she was like, they took the villain. We need to get him back. And I have devised a plan. You need to kill me. Boom. End of book 1.
Beautiful.
Bravo.
Hopefully, I know that was a really long summary, but unfortunately, there's a lot that actually happens.
There's a lot.
Yeah.